He tapped his wine glass with a fork, and the table went quiet. 20 of my closest friends and family members turned to look at him. He cleared his throat, smiled at me, and said, "I found someone better." The words hung in the air like smoke. Gasps scattered across the table. My best friend's mouth fell open. My mother set down her fork slowly, like she was afraid it might shatter. My cheeks burned so hot I could feel my pulse in my face. I gripped my napkin under the table until my knuckles turned white. But somewhere deep in my chest, beneath the humiliation, beneath the shock, a small, cold thought formed. He's about to regret this. He just doesn't know it yet. My name is Taylor. I turned 30 that night, though it didn't feel like much of a celebration. I'm a project manager at a mid-sized engineering firm downtown, the kind of person who keeps spreadsheets color-coded and never misses a deadline. I've always been the quiet builder. While other people chased attention and applause, I was in the background, making sure everything actually worked. That's been my whole life, really. Growing up, I wasn't the loud one at the dinner table. I wasn't the sibling who got the spotlight or the kid who made adults stop and stare. I was steady, dependable, forgettable. And, honestly, for a long time, I was fine with that. I married Derek when I was 26. He was charming in that way some people are, where the whole room seems to lean toward them when they speak. His family was well off, not millionaires, but comfortable enough to act like they owned every room they walked into. His mother, Helen, had opinions about everything and shared them freely. His father was quieter, but his silence always felt like agreement with whatever Helen decided. From the day I entered that family, I was measured and found lacking. I didn't come from money. I didn't wear the right designers. I didn't laugh at their jokes the right way. Helen once told me, during a Thanksgiving dinner, that Derek could have done better. She said it casually, the way someone might comment on the weather. Derek heard her. He didn't say a word. That was the pattern. I would be slighted, overlooked, or quietly dismissed, and Derek would stand there like a bystander watching something unfortunate happen to a stranger. Over the years, I learned to swallow the sting. I focused on my work. I built friendships outside of his circle. I found small victories that kept me going. A promotion I earned on my own, a weekend trip with my college roommate, a garden I planted in the backyard that bloomed every spring no matter what else was falling apart. These things were mine. Nobody could take credit for them, and nobody could take them away. But here's the thing about being underestimated. It cuts both ways. People who dismiss you stop paying attention to you. They stop watching what you do. They assume you're just going to take whatever they hand you and keep quiet. And for a long time I did. I wasn't rich. I wasn't glamorous. I didn't have a powerful family backing me up. But I had something none of them expected. I had resilience, forged in years of being treated like an afterthought. And I had a few secrets of my own. The kind of secrets that don't make noise until the exact right moment. If you've ever been publicly embarrassed or underestimated by someone who is supposed to love you, I want you to hit subscribe right now. I want to hear your story in the comments, every detail, because I know how isolating it feels to think you're the only one. You're not. Let's show them that being quiet doesn't mean being weak. Click that share button and let's get this story out there. Because the people who try to break us in public deserve to see us rise in public too. The restaurant was called Bollaro's. It was an Italian place on the west side of town, dimly lit with candles on every table and the kind of heavy cloth napkins that made you feel like you were somewhere important. I had picked it myself for my birthday dinner. I'd sent invitations 3 weeks in advance, coordinated the seating, even called ahead to make sure they could do a small cake after the main course. I wanted it to be perfect. I wanted one night where everything felt right. The first hour was beautiful. People laughed, clinked glasses, told stories about old times. My friend Vanessa sat to my left, cracking jokes about our college days. Derek sat to my right, his hand occasionally resting on my shoulder. He seemed relaxed. Happy even. I remember thinking, maybe things are turning around. Maybe this is the year everything clicks into place. I should have known better. Good feelings in my marriage were always the calm before something ugly. It happened right after the main course. Derek stood up. He tapped his glass, and the conversation died down. Everyone looked at him with warm, expectant smiles, probably assuming he was going to toast me. He looked around the table with this strange expression, not nervous exactly, but almost excited. Like a child about to reveal a secret he'd been keeping. "I want to say something," he began. "Taylor and I have had a good run. But I think everyone here deserves to know the truth." He paused. My stomach dropped. The air in the room changed. "I've met someone. Someone who understands me in ways Taylor never could. I've found someone better, and I think it's time to be honest about that." Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. The sound of a fork hitting a plate somewhere at the next table over seemed deafening. I could hear the gentle hum of the restaurant's ventilation system and the faint clatter from the kitchen. The candle in front of me flickered, and I watched the flame bend sideways as if the room itself was recoiling. Vanessa grabbed my hand under the table. Across from me, my brother David sat with his jaw tight, his eyes moving between me and Derek like he was calculating whether to stand up and say something. My mother, who was sitting 3 seats down, pressed her hand over her mouth. Helen, Derek's mother, had a strange half-smile on her face. She didn't look surprised. She looked satisfied. Someone behind me, I think it was my coworker Priya, whispered to the person beside her, "Did she hear that?" "That's harsh." I heard every word. Every single word. Derek sat back down like he'd just finished giving a quarterly report. Casual. Unbothered. He picked up his wine glass and took a sip. He actually took a sip. I stared at him, and for a moment, the humiliation was so heavy I couldn't breathe. My face burned. My throat tightened. I wanted to cry, to scream, to flip the table over and walk out. But something stopped me. A thought, small but sharp, sliced through the fog of shame. The prenup. Our prenup had a clause. A very specific clause about public infidelity. I had almost forgotten about it. Derek had definitely forgotten about it. His lawyer had probably warned him about it 4 years ago, but Derek never paid attention to details. That was always my job. And right now, in this terrible, humiliating moment, that detail was the only thing keeping me upright. I reached for my water glass, took a slow sip, and let the smallest smile cross my lips. Derek didn't notice. He never noticed. The days after my birthday dinner were the worst kind of torture, the kind that happens slowly and in plain sight. Derek didn't leave the house immediately. He acted like his announcement was reasonable, like declaring he'd found someone else at my birthday party was just being honest. He walked around the house with this unbearable lightness, humming to himself, checking his phone constantly, texting someone and smiling at the screen like a teenager with a crush. He didn't apologize. He didn't even bring it up. It was as if he expected me to simply accept it and step aside gracefully. The first betrayal came at a family brunch the following Sunday. Helen had organized it, which should have been my first warning. When I arrived, Derek was already seated at the head of the table, and the seat next to him, the one where I usually sat, was taken by his cousin Rachel. Nobody moved. Nobody offered to switch. Helen looked at me with that same half-smile from the restaurant and gestured toward the far end of the table. "There's a spot down there, Taylor," she said. Like I was a guest. Like I was someone's +1 who barely belonged. I sat down without a word. Derek didn't look at me once during the entire meal. He talked about his golf trips, his new car, his plans for the next chapter. His father nodded along. Helen beamed. I ate my eggs in silence and felt like a ghost haunting my own life. The second betrayal was quieter but sharper. I got a notification from our bank on Tuesday morning. Derek had attempted to transfer $60,000 from our joint savings account into a new personal account. $60,000. Just like that. No discussion, no warning, no legal proceeding. He just tried to take it. My hands were shaking when I read the notification, but my mind was clear. I called the bank immediately and placed a hold on any transfers requiring dual authorization. The banker, a woman named Patricia, paused on the phone. "Mrs. Holloway, are you sure you want to flag this? Your husband seemed quite certain about the transfer." "I'm sure," I said. "Nothing moves without my signature." When Derek found out the transfer was blocked, he stormed into the kitchen where I was making coffee. The smell of fresh grounds filled the room, sharp and bitter, a perfect match for the conversation that followed. "What did you do?" he demanded. "I protected our assets," I said, not looking up from my mug. "Our assets?" "Taylor, I'm trying to start fresh here. You can't just freeze everything." "Actually, I can. Read the account agreement. Both names, both signatures. That's how joint accounts work." He stared at me like I had spoken a foreign language. Then he walked out, slamming the door so hard the picture frames in the hallway rattled. I stood there in the quiet kitchen, steam rising from my coffee, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. Not a lot of it, but enough. Enough to know I wasn't going to crumble. The third betrayal was social, and it stung in a different way. Our mutual friends started pulling away. Not all of them, but enough. I got fewer texts. Invitations to group dinners stopped arriving. When I reached out to our friend Greg, someone I'd known for 6 years, he was hesitant. "Look, Taylor, I don't want to get in the middle of things," he said. "Derek's been telling people you're being difficult. That you're trying to control the money out of spite. Greg, he announced at my birthday dinner that he found someone else. In front of everyone." There was a long pause. "Yeah, that was rough. But you know how Derek is. He's dramatic." "I'm sure he didn't mean it like that." I hung up. I didn't have the energy to explain what like that felt like from my side of the table. Vanessa stayed. David stayed. A few others stayed. But the circle got smaller and the loneliness got louder. Through all of this, Derek walked around with a confidence that bordered on delusion. He had already mentally won. He had the family on his side, the social narrative in his favor, and a new girlfriend whose name I didn't know and didn't care to learn. He assumed I was defeated. He assumed the public embarrassment had done its job, that I would quietly sign whatever papers appeared and disappear from his life like a footnote. But here's what Derek never understood about me. I don't react when I'm hurt. I plan. Every slight, every dismissal, every smug smile across the breakfast table was fuel. I was gathering it all, storing it, waiting. And the more confident he became, the less careful he got. That was exactly what I needed. What none of them knew, not Derek, not Helen, not the friends who had written me off, was that I had already started building my case. It began the morning after my birthday dinner, before the sun was even up. I sat at my desk in the spare bedroom, the one Derek called Taylor's little office in that dismissive tone he used for everything that mattered to me, and I pulled out a manila folder from the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet. Inside that folder was our prenuptial agreement, 12 pages of legal language that Derek had barely glanced at before signing 4 years ago. He had been so eager to get the wedding planning underway that he treated the prenup like a formality, something his father insisted on to protect the family. Derek signed it the way he signed restaurant receipts, quickly, without reading. But I read every word. Twice. And I remembered every clause. Clause 14, Section B, Public Infidelity Disclosure. It stated, in language that was surprisingly clear for a legal document, that if either party publicly acknowledged or disclosed an extramarital relationship, the other party would be entitled to 70% of all shared marital assets, full ownership of the primary residence, and a structured alimony arrangement lasting 5 years. Derek's father's lawyer had insisted on this clause, ironically, to protect Derek. They assumed I would be the one who might stray. They never imagined it would be their own son standing up at a crowded restaurant and handing me the keys to everything. I contacted my own lawyer the next morning. Her name was Sandra Osei, and she worked out of a small firm downtown that specialized in family law. Sandra was sharp, methodical, and had a reputation for being unshakable in negotiations. When I sat across from her desk and told her what happened, she leaned back in her chair, folded her hands, and said, "He said this in front of witnesses?" 20 of them, I replied. She nodded slowly, a small, knowing smile forming. "Do you have the prenup with you?" I slid the folder across the desk. She opened it, found clause 14, and read it twice. Then she looked up at me. "Taylor, do you understand what this means?" "I do," I said. "That's why I'm here." Over the next 3 weeks, Sandra and I built our strategy. I gathered evidence methodically. I saved every text message where Derek referenced his new relationship. I documented his attempt to move money from the joint account. I collected screenshots of social media posts where he appeared publicly with another woman at events, restaurants, and even a weekend getaway to the coast. Every piece of evidence pointed to the same thing: public, undeniable infidelity. Not hidden. Not suspected. Declared. In my quieter moments, usually late at night when the house was dark and still, I would sit at my desk and imagine Derek's face when the clause was read aloud to him. That smug grin dissolving. Those confident eyes going wide. The realization spreading across his features like a crack in glass. And I would close the folder, turn off the lamp, and go to bed feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Certainty. The person who helped me survive those weeks wasn't a family member. It was a woman named Lorraine Davis, my division director at work. Lorraine was 53, had been through her own brutal divorce 15 years earlier, and carried herself with the kind of calm authority that made people listen even when she whispered. She had noticed my distraction at work almost immediately after the birthday dinner. She called me into her office on a Wednesday afternoon, closed the door, and said, "Sit down and tell me what's happening." I didn't want to cry. I had been holding everything together with precision and purpose, but something about Lorraine's voice, the genuine concern in it, cracked the surface. I told her everything. The dinner, the announcement, Helen's smirk, the bank transfer, the disappearing friends. She listened without interrupting, her fingers laced together on her desk, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Do you have a plan?" "I do." "Is it a good one?" "My lawyer thinks so." Lorraine nodded. "Then here's what I need you to do. Stop reacting to him emotionally. Every time you show anger or pain in front of him or his family, they use it to confirm their narrative that you're the unstable one. Be calm. Be pleasant. Be absolutely unreadable. Let him keep talking. Let him keep posting. Let him keep assuming he's won. The more comfortable he gets, the more evidence he gives you." That advice changed everything. From that day forward, I became a mirror. When Derek made snide comments at the dinner table, I smiled politely. When Helen invited me to family events only to seat me in the corner, I went graciously and made small talk with whoever was nearby. When friends texted me with gossip about Derek's new relationship, I responded with simple, neutral messages. "Thanks for letting me know. I appreciate you thinking of me." Nothing more. Lorraine checked in with me every few days. She would stop by my desk or send a short text. "Holding steady?" And I would respond, "Steady." She also connected me with a financial advisor she trusted, someone who helped me understand exactly what the prenup's asset division would look like in practical terms. The numbers were significant. Not life-changing wealth, but enough to start over completely. Enough to buy my own place, build my own future, and never depend on Derek or his family again. Meanwhile, Derek continued his performance. He brought his girlfriend, a woman named Jenna, to his parents' anniversary party. He posted photos online with captions about new beginnings and finding real happiness. He told mutual friends that our marriage had been over for years and that I was dragging things out. Each statement, each post, each public appearance was another brick in the wall I was building around him. He just couldn't see it yet. There were hard nights. I won't pretend there weren't. Nights when the house felt too quiet and the weight of everything pressed down so hard I could barely breathe. Nights when I questioned whether the plan was worth it, whether I should just sign whatever he wanted and walk away with my dignity in tatters, but at least free of the fight. On those nights, I would pull out the prenup, read Clause 14 one more time, and remind myself that dignity isn't something you walk away from. It's something you defend. The day came on a Thursday in October, 6 weeks after my birthday dinner. Sandra had arranged a formal meeting at her office. She sent the invitation through proper legal channels, addressed to Derek and his attorney, requesting a discussion regarding the dissolution of the marriage and the enforcement of prenuptial terms. Derek's lawyer, a man named Philip Trent, responded within 2 hours, agreeing to the meeting. He was confident, I'm sure. He probably assumed this would be a straightforward negotiation where I would accept whatever scraps Derek offered. Sandra's office was on the 9th floor of a downtown building. The conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a long mahogany table, and leather chairs that creaked when you sat down. I arrived 30 minutes early. I wore a navy blue suit, simple jewelry, and flat shoes. I didn't want to look like I was performing. I wanted to look like someone who had already won and was simply here to collect. Derek arrived with Philip, Helen, and his father, Gerald. Of course Helen came. She wouldn't have missed this for the world. She walked in with her chin high and her handbag tucked under her arm like she was attending a charity luncheon. Derek was wearing his expensive watch, the one he bought himself after his last promotion, and he had that look on his face. That look. The one that said he was already 3 steps ahead of everyone in the room. Sandra stood when they entered. She shook everyone's hand with professional warmth and gestured for them to sit. I remained seated, my hands folded on the table, my face calm. "Thank you all for coming," Sandra began. "We're here today to discuss the terms of the marriage dissolution between Taylor Holloway and Derek Holloway, with specific attention to the prenuptial agreement signed by both parties on March 14th, 4 years ago." Philip cleared his throat. "We're prepared to discuss a fair and equitable division. Derek is willing to offer Taylor a reasonable settlement in exchange for a clean, uncontested separation." Sandra smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the kind of smile a chess player gives when their opponent moves a pawn exactly where they wanted it. "Before we discuss offers," Sandra said, "I'd like to direct everyone's attention to Clause 14, Section B of the prenuptial agreement." She opened her folder and slid copies across the table. "This is the Public Infidelity Disclosure Clause." The room went still. Helen's hand froze halfway to her water glass. Gerald shifted in his seat. Philip picked up the document and began reading. Derek looked at me for the first time since he walked in. Sandra continued. "On September 12th, at Bolaro's restaurant, in front of approximately 20 witnesses, Derek publicly stated, and I quote, 'I've found someone better.' This constitutes a public acknowledgement of an extramarital interest." Subsequent social media posts, public appearances with a new partner, and statements made to mutual acquaintances further establish a pattern of public infidelity disclosure. She pulled out a second folder. "We have time-stamped screenshots, witness statements from 7 individuals who were present at the dinner, bank records showing attempted unilateral asset transfers, and social media archives. All of this falls squarely within the parameters of Clause 14. Derek's face changed. It was slow, like watching ice crack on a pond. The smugness didn't disappear all at once. First the corners of his mouth dropped. Then his eyebrows tightened. Then his jaw set, and his eyes darted to Philip, looking for rescue. Philip was reading the clause carefully, his lips moving slightly. He looked up at Sandra. "This clause is broadly written," he said. "We could argue the intent was limited to formal infidelity disclosures, not casual statements." He stood up at a dinner table in front of 20 people and announced he found someone better. Sandra replied evenly. He then brought his girlfriend to family events and posted about her online. If that's not a public disclosure, I'm not sure what would qualify. Helen spoke for the first time. "This is absurd." Derek was simply being honest. "You can't punish someone for honesty." Sandra turned to her calmly. "Mrs. Holloway, this meeting is between the legal representatives of the 2 parties. But to address your point, honesty and legal consequence are not mutually exclusive. Derek was free to be honest. And the prenuptial agreement is free to enforce its terms." Derek slammed his hand on the table. "This is a setup. You planned this, Taylor. You sat there at that dinner and said nothing because you were waiting for this." I looked at him. Really looked at him. For the first time in months, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel invisible. I felt exactly like the person I had been building myself into all along. "No, Derek," I said. "I sat there because you humiliated me in front of everyone I love on my 30th birthday. I didn't plan your announcement. You did. I just knew what it meant because I actually read the document you signed." The room was silent. Philip leaned over and whispered something to Derek. Derek's face went pale. Helen's half-smile was completely gone, replaced by something tight and anxious. Gerald stared at the table. Sandra spoke again. "Under the terms of Clause 14, Taylor is entitled to 70% of all shared marital assets, full ownership of the primary residence, and structured alimony for 5 years. We are prepared to finalize these terms today, or we can proceed to formal litigation, which will make all of this evidence a matter of public record. Derek looked at Philip. Philip looked at the prenup. Then Philip looked at Derek and gave a single, small nod. It was over. I walked out of Sandra's office into the October air. The city was loud with traffic and people and wind pushing through the buildings, and all of it sounded like freedom. My phone buzzed. It was Lorraine. How did it go? I typed back one word. Done. I stood on the sidewalk for a long time, just breathing. Not celebrating. Not gloating. Just standing still and feeling the weight of the last 6 weeks lift off my shoulders like a coat I'd been wearing in summer. It was over. Not just the marriage, but the years of being treated like an afterthought. The years of swallowing insults and sitting at the far end of the table and pretending it didn't hurt. Derek signed the papers 2 weeks later. He didn't have a choice. His own family's lawyer had written the clause that buried him. Helen stopped calling. Gerald sent a single text that said, "I'm sorry it came to this." I didn't respond. Some apologies are too late and too small to deserve an answer. I kept the house. I kept my dignity. I kept the garden that bloomed every spring. And I started over, not as someone who had been discarded, but as someone who had defended herself when it mattered most. Vanessa threw me a real birthday dinner the following month. Just 6 people, a small Italian place, no speeches. She raised her glass and said to Taylor, "Who played the long game and won?" I laughed, maybe for the first time in months. I learned something through all of this. Dignity isn't given to you by other people. It's defended by you, sometimes quietly, sometimes fiercely, but always by you. And sometimes, being underestimated is the greatest advantage you'll ever have. Because while they're busy looking past you, you're busy building something they never saw coming. If someone has ever embarrassed you publicly or tried to humiliate you in front of friends or family, you know how powerless it feels in that moment. Your face burns. Your throat tightens. You want to disappear. But here's what I need you to hear. There is always a way to reclaim your dignity. It might not happen that night or that week, but it will happen if you refuse to give up on yourself. Subscribe to this channel and share your story in the comments. I want to hear how you stood your ground or how you plan to. Click that share button and help this story reach the people who need it most, the ones sitting at the far end of the table right now, thinking nobody sees them. I see you. You deserve to be seen and respected, no matter what anyone else tries to do. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and click share to help it reach more people who need to hear it. Your voice matters in this community. I'm reading every comment, and I want to hear your experience. Drop it below. Let's keep this conversation going, because stories like these remind us that we are never as alone as they want us to believe.